The stock market soared to near record highs yesterday.
The stock market continued its bull run Thursday. The Dow rose nearly 61 points.
Even the person with very little disposable income all of a sudden began to play in the stock market because nobody could fail, because stock prices were just going up and up and up.
Another day, another record.
And the internet and technology stocks just going wild.
Gained more than 100 points to close at 7,895.81, the highest finish ever.
It was a time where we had the biggest bull market in the history of the world. Ken Lay was right there acting as a cheerleader.
Obviously, our stock has been doing very well. I think there's a fairly good chance we could see this stock price double again over the next year to 18 months.
Enron mounted a campaign to capture the hearts and minds of stock analysts.
The natural gas stocks include Enron.
We're never satisfied, and I don't want us to ever be satisfied with the stock price. It should always be higher.
Enron posted a 30% jump in second quarter profits as web-based trading boosted its wholesale energy business.
The game was played on Wall Street in such an established way throughout the 1990s. As long as a company met or exceeded the analyst projections for quarterly earnings per share, the stock went higher.
The game was called pump and dump. Top execs would push the stock price up and then cash in their multi-million-dollar options.
People at Enron got paid in large part through stock. Everyone had a huge stake in seeing the stock price go up. And it was driven very clearly by the profits every single quarter. They were exceedingly conscious of that. Skilling was, and everyone else in the company was. They posted the stock price in the elevator.
You were surrounded by the health of the company. What's the stock price doing? We were consumed by it.
Enron is a big winner today.
One of the things that fascinated me was that almost all of the Wall Street analysts who covered Enron had buy ratings or strong buy ratings on the company's stock.
Why were the analysts blinded to the company's deceit?
We relied on the information that was available at the time.
I trusted the integrity of the company's certified financial statements and the representations of the company's management.
And we've been absolutely upfront with the analysts.
Jeff Skilling was the critical component in creating the Enron illusion. Time and time again, when we had a question to the sell-side analysts that they couldn't answer, the response was, I'll give Jeff a call. I'll run this by Jeff.
By giving Jeff a call, the analysts weren't analyzing at all. They were willing to believe virtually anything Enron told them.
Most of the analysts right now have the target price on us from $100 to $115 a share.
Any analyst who didn't buy the company line became an enemy of Enron. Enron's CFO, Andy Fastow, had his eye on John Olson, one of the only analysts skeptical of the Enron story.
Enron loved analyst strong buy recommendations.
Merrill was informed by Fastow, either you get somebody who is on board with us and has a strong buy recommendation and loves us at the same time, or we don't do any business with you. I knew that my days were numbered.
This is an abuse.
Merrill Lynch fired John Olson. Soon after, Fastow rewarded the bank with 2 investment banking jobs worth $50 million.
Analysts were routinely getting large bonuses from the investment banking departments to bring in investment banking deals. Once that happens, never was heard a discouraging word.
It was one of the bloodiest days in Wall Street history.
Shares plummeted 31%.
Tech stocks led Friday's fierce sell-off.
This is really a great wake-up call.
Millions of nervous investors following the huge drop on Friday. The Dow Jones...
Enron was especially a big deal by the end of the year 2000 because by then most internet companies had already begun to fall and everybody on Wall Street was looking for the next big thing. And here you had Enron, which appeared to be this shining star of a new economy company. Its stock price went up 90% in the year 2000 and had gone up over 50% the year before that. It was an it stock on Wall Street, one of those companies that can seemingly do no wrong.
We were the poster child for the new economy. We had this culture that had a lot of focus on reminding us how good we were. And as that culture emerged, then we get to Fortune magazine telling us we were the most innovative corporation in America. then we really began to feel good about it.
Andy Fastow was Enron's chief financial officer. His job was to cover up the fact that Enron was becoming a financial fantasy land.
Enron essentially was losing money on a cash basis year after year, and yet it was reporting profits. So it was defying the laws of financial gravity, and the way it was doing it was with something called structured finance. And the maestro of all that at Enron was Andy Fastow.
Andy was very young. He was hired by Jeff Skilling probably before he was even 30, and he idolized Jeff Skilling, and he certainly wanted to please the boss.
To please the boss, Fastow had to figure out a way to keep the stock price up by hiding the fact that Enron was $30 billion in debt.
People pressured by the need to keep the stock price up begin to cheat a little bit, but then the next quarter comes along and you have to cheat a little more to do the new cheating to make up for the old cheating. And before long, you've created a momentum that now you can't stop.
Fastow created hundreds of special companies to perform a magic trick, prop up Enron's stock by making its debt disappear. To outside investors, it looked like cash was coming in the door. In fact, Enron was just stashing its debt in Fastow's companies where investors couldn't see it.
As disturbing as Enron's own misconduct is the growing evidence that leading U.S. financial institutions not only took part in Enron's deceptive practices, but at times designed, advanced, and profited from them.
The Enron fraud is the story of synergistic corruption. There are supposed to be checks and balances in the system. The lawyers are supposed to say no. The accountants are supposed to say no. The bankers are supposed to say no, but no one who was supposed to say no said no. They all took their share of the money from the fraud and put it in their pockets.
Enron paid its advisors well. In 2001, the accounting firm Arthur Andersen received $1 million a week. Enron's law firm, Vinson & Elkins, did nearly as well.
Everyone had their hand out at the table. They were all being paid, and as long as Enron continued, they received their fees. They were a part of the process. So it's hard now to say, oh, we didn't know anything.
Had we known then what we know now about Enron's practices, we would not have engaged in these transactions with Enron.
The facts that we now have come to light about Enron, however, were not known at the time.
I believe that the Citigroup professionals involved with these transactions acted in good faith.
I'd like you here to look at one Citi email, Exhibit 333I.
The email trail here is all too lurid. Oh, for instance, one email I remember where the banker writes, Enron loves these deals. They produce cash, but they don't have to show the debt on the balance sheet. Now, a high school student can figure out that the banks were all knowing participants in this wrongdoing.
California, here we come. The first clues to Enron's new strategy hit California with a jolt.
It started at noon, rolling across the state. Sacramento, San Francisco, Beverly Hills, Long Beach, San Diego.
26,000 miles of California power lines, enough to circle the earth. But for the second day in a row, not enough electricity for America's largest state and the world's sixth largest economy.
The first thing we heard about this energy crisis is where our lights are going to go off in the middle of winter when we're using half the electricity we normally use during the summer.
The Bay Area got hit by not one, but two rolling blackouts today.
We only need 28,000 to 30,000 megawatts in December. We have an installed capacity in California at the time of 45,000 megawatts. Plenty of power to meet our electric demand. Of course, we had blackouts in December.
The people who control California's power grid say once again they're worried about having to black out the northern half of the state.
When the rolling blackouts started in California, there was definitely a lot of excitement in the air. It was something new. It was something that hadn't been encountered before. It was, how is this event going to affect the price of power?
Controlled rotating outages are being implemented. I knew that there was illegality going on. I could feel it, I could smell it, I could sense it, and there was no other explanation. because the numbers just didn't add up. We had enough power in California. It was never about lack of supply.
When I ran for governor in 1998, not one human being asked me about electricity. This thing kind of came out of the woods as far as I was concerned, and I was trying in the early days to learn what was happening, how we could fix the problem.
California was selected by Enron as the prime place to experiment with this new concept of deregulated electricity.
Reducing electricity costs is only one benefit from choice and competition.
In 1996, under pressure from energy companies, Governor Pete Wilson and the California legislature passed a bill allowing for the deregulation of electricity.
I wasn't in the legislature in 1996, but I can tell you that there isn't a legislator alive that can tell you with any sophistication how a deregulated electricity market ought to work. Not a one.
California's deregulated system was a bizarre compromise between legislators and free market advocates. The rules were complicated and hard to follow. Inside Enron, California's system was little more than a joke. And once in place, Enron made sure that the joke would be on California.
And I remember the conversation I'd had with Ken. At the end of it, he says, well, Dave, old buddy, let me just tell you, it doesn't matter really to us what kooky rules you Californians put in place. I got a bunch of really smart people down there who figure out how to make money anyhow.
One of the smartest guys at Enron was Tim Belden, who ran the West Coast trading desk.
Tim Belden was a fervent believer in the idea of free markets, and as such, he spent hours poring over the new rules for the deregulation of California's energy industry, looking for loopholes that Enron could exploit to make money.
He found plenty. After the bankruptcy, a confidential memo surfaced revealing the names of Belden's strategies to game the California market. Wheel out, get shorty, fat boy. Recently, audio tapes of the Enron traders were discovered.
What do you want to call this project? I have a catchy name for that. How about, something friendly like Death Star?
The tapes revealed Enron's contempt for any values except one, making money.
Hey, John. It's Tim. The regulatory is all in a big concern about is we're wheeling power out of California. He just steals money from California to the tune of $1 million. Can we rephrase that? Okay. He arbitrages the California market to the tune of $1 million or two a day. Right.
An arbitrage opportunity has been defined to me as any opportunity to make abnormal profit. So an abnormal profit would be returns above and beyond the norm. I was told that a good trader is a creative trader, and a creative trader is a trader that can find arbitrage opportunities.
One of those opportunities was called Ricochet.
I'll see you guys. I'm taking mine to the desert.
In the midst of the energy shortages, Enron traders started to export power out of the state. When prices soared, they brought it back in.
You're getting rich. Trying to.
Traders would stay after a 12-hour shift and pore over maps of the Western energy grid. What are the permutations and combinations of ways to move power around the West? And I think that's something that Enron knew better than any other energy marketer in the country, period.
We know all of the California imports. We know all of the California load.
We're getting pretty spoiled on with this money.
You said you were getting a little scared. We're making a little too much, and I tend to agree with you.
These are two traders, Traders. This is what they say. What we did was overbook the transmission line we had the rights on and said to California utilities, if you want to use the line, pay us. By the time they agreed to meet our price, rolling blackouts had already hit California, and the price for electricity went through the roof. Did you have any knowledge that this was happening?
The only thing that I'm aware of, Senator, is there was a difference of opinion on the rules of the independent system operator. It was just set up. The rules weren't quite clear.
We have traders here from Enron who were saying they did something wrong, but you don't see anything wrong. I have one last question, and then I am done.
Traders soon discovered that by shutting down power plants, they could create artificial shortages that would push prices even higher.
Hey, this is David up at Enron.
There's not much demand for power at all, and if we shut it down, could you bring it back up in 3 or 4 hours?
Oh, yeah.
Why don't you just go ahead and shut her down then, if that's okay?
Okay.
When you see 2 or 3 energy companies with 30, 35% of their entire capacity down for maintenance on a single day, and as a result, the price of electricity skyrocketing 300 or 400%, and then a week later someone else does it up in Northern California, you begin to believe something's not smelling right here.
I want you guys to get a little creative,
okay,
and come up with a reason to go down.
Like a forced outage type thing.
Right.
Those guys, at the flip of a switch, could just yank the California economy on its leash whenever they wanted to, and they did it, and they did it, and they did it, and they made so much money.
The heart of it is that an industry that went for 100 years, from the days of Edison, built the best electrical system in the world, sold the power at reasonable prices to consumers, and was very reliable, was all of a sudden turned into a casino.
These strategies made some money for Enron, but the real money was made by betting that the price of energy would go up. It did, and the West Coast traders made nearly $2 billion for Enron.
There's nothing wrong with the capitalism. There's nothing wrong with the free enterprise.
You can't treat electricity like you treat oranges. It's the lifeblood of society. It can't be stored. You can't turn these people loose and let them just have a, quote, free market, because a free market is expensive to customers.
There would be ample supply available?
Oh, sure there would.
It wasn't just Enron. Every company traded according to the rules that California put up there.
And where's the future of Enron? Can you believe that? Yeah. We'll definitely retire by we're 30.
We're talking about a commodity that normally trades in the $35 to $45 range. High prices are when it gets in the 50s. Or $1,000.
Prices aren't going to stay at $1,000 forever.
If we out the weak people in the market, get rid of them, and you know what? The people who are strong will stick around.
The Enron traders never seem to step back and say, wait, is what we're doing ethical? Is it in our best long-term interests? Does it help us if we totally rape California? Does that advance our goals of nationwide deregulation? Instead, they sought out every loophole they could in order to profit from California's misery.
Temperatures in California are hitting higher than 100 degrees, fueling wildfires and fears that California's strained power grid could once again near collapse.
What's happening? There's a fire under the core line. It's been derated from 45 to 2100.
Burn, baby, burn. That's a beautiful thing.
I was never comfortable on the trading floor at Enron. And if I had questions, I didn't ask them because I didn't want to know the answer. I didn't want confirmed what I suspected might be true. That what I was doing was in fact unseemly, or was at least unethical, if not worse.
Why did the traders do what they did? Was it their multi-million-dollar bonuses? Or had Enron found a way to exploit the darker side of human behavior?
In the early 60s, Stanley Milgram tried to figure out what characteristics there were of evil people. Was there an evil strain, or could normal people do really bad things? And so he set up this experiment. In the experiment, he had an actor playing an experimental subject and a real experimental subject.
You want to step right in here, learner, and have a seat there?
They went into this room, and he had an experimenter say, we're going to see if mild electric shocks will help people memorize lists.
Incorrect. You'll now get a shock of 75 volts. Oh. Soft hair. He kind of did some yelling in there.
The Milgram experiment has a lot to say about Enron, because I think people lost their sense of morality. Like Milgram, once you accepted the idea that behaving inhumanely was okay, you could do anything. And the shocks increased with the number of mistakes that they made.
I can't stand the pain. Let me out of here. Can't stand it. I'm not going to kill that man there.
The subject, the real subject, is begging the scientist-looking person to stop too, and the scientist only says, the experiment requires that you continue.
Please continue. Go on, please. You accept all the responsibility? The responsibility is mine, correct. Please go on.
In a way, Skilling was almost like the guy telling those people below him that it was okay to up the power.
420 volts. California's electric utilities may have to pull the plug on millions of customers.
You gotta love the West.
435 volts. During the height of Wednesday's blackout, fire crews had to free people trapped in elevators.
All that money you guys stole from those poor grandmothers of California?
Yeah, Grandma Millie, man.
450 volts.
Yeah, they're out there having fun in the warm California sun.
We must continue. Go on, please.
You're going to keep giving, what, 450 volts every shot now?
That's correct. Continue.
It's kind of hard to say, well, we should be, we shouldn't do this even though it's allowed because, I mean, that's what we do. Right.
450 volts.
Milgram's discovery was disturbing. 50% of the subjects were willing to shock to the death, so long as the commands came from a seemingly legitimate source.
Yeah, they're out there having fun.
We could just hear rumbles all the way up and down Main Street here and all throughout the city that things were very difficult at Enron. One guy who a year before had come to me and said, I'm working for Enron, I was very excited, but within a year was waking up every night with nightmares. I've got no life left, and I feel like I'm being consumed by this company.
As doubts began to surface about the company and the erratic behavior of its CEO, Enron's stock began to fall.
I remember one of the most poignant meetings I'd ever had with Jeff. I had left Enron, and I had come over to talk about whether or not I would return to Enron. I said, Jeff, you've got a real problem. The traders, they will cut your throat if they think it will get them to the trough sooner. Jeff was silent. And he looked out the window, and he looked back at me and he said, yeah, Amanda, you're most likely right. By the end, the traders ran Enron. The inmates had taken over the asylum.